Continue to
Tonight, the city of Lagos once agog as all routes.
Be the first to know. From the north, south, east, west, and around Africa, we break the news.
One Nigeria.
Now you can catch all the actions live as the news breaks. We are Core TV News.
Welcome to Core TV,
24-hour news station.
This is News Digest, and welcome to our studios. I am Sheyi Martins, and with me is Nifemi Toye. Nifemi, you're welcome.
Yeah, good morning.
Indeed. Well, on the program this morning, let's start with this premise. I need you to understand this because we are talking about issues that concerns each and every one of us. Recently, the coordinating minister for the economy released a figure to the international community, and very shortly after then, Nigeria was rated as the most viable economy, the leading economy in all of Africa. After the release of such figures, everyone who is involved, particularly here in this country, started asking the question, what does this most viable economy in the whole of Africa means to the ordinary people in the street? The coordinating minister for the economy did say that it makes our nation more prosperous and, of course, inviting to others across the globe. The economy of this nation will be open to all and make things easy for investments in our country. Having said this, every day within the last couple of years, there has been one problem or the other in terms of labor crisis. With the work pattern, everyone in our nation is asking the question, didn't government speak with these people? Aha! There's been agreements upon agreements with doctors, with ASU, with teachers, with oil workers, name them. There is some form of labor crisis pervading the nation today. This morning on Core Digest, we're discussing Nigeria labor crisis, the unfulfilled agreement. Is it on the part of governments or on the part of the labor unions and the trade unions? Very many in our society, recently the doctors took to strike an industrial action as a warning to start a bigger one, hopefully in a couple of days. All federal hospitals and institutions are becoming paralyzed nationwide because of this labor crisis. To discuss the issue with us, we have in our studios a legal practitioner, Fred Okey Nzeako, as well as Ejiro Onobrakpeya, a public affairs analyst. Gentlemen, you're welcome to our studios.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Nifemi.
All right, let's kickstart from the very beginning. All of these labor disputes end up in strike actions, and unfortunately, consistently, that has disrupted progress, not only economically, but of course, as live impacts on the average Nigerian. One would ask that, are labor leaders running out of ideas in the issue of conflict resolution and, dialogue? Why has strike become the norm over the years in Nigeria? Let me start with you, Fred.
Okay. I think it is a worrisome development that strike that is essentially supposed to be the last bastion of the process of negotiation. As a matter of fact, strike is only called off when the process of negotiation breaks down without achieving any meaningful fruit, without being fruitful, and then without the party that feels cheated, the party that feels shortchanged. When such party is has not been able to advance its cause on the table of negotiation, and then due either to the to the recalcitrant of the other party, or due to one factor or the other beyond their control, then the party may resort to strike. As a matter of fact, using that as a measure to finally press home its demand. But the worrisome aspect is that even before going to negotiation, strike now comes as the first step in Nigeria. And that is not good enough. Absolutely. Strike should not be the first measure. But there must be a reason for that, because Nigeria was not like that before. And what I can easily see is that workers at all levels, in all professions, in all industries, feel so terribly shortchanged by government when they see the humongous amount. Because most times the issue that leads to strike is usually issue of welfare and the conditions of service. And when they see the welfare and conditions of service should actually be sorted out with money. And when they see that so much money is being spent by political officers at the detriment and at the total utter neglect of the welfare and conditions of service of the workers now lose the patience to go through the whole hog of negotiation. That is one aspect. The second aspect is that government on its own has been found not to be sincere in its negotiation and in its carrying forward the issues and agreements reached at the negotiation table. And in the face of such insincerity on the side of government at all levels, the workers are now faced with little or no option than to go on strike and withdraw their services. And at the end of the day, the economy, the people, the nation all suffer for it.
I almost said Bruce. Ejiro, here we have a situation where they say we are the largest economy in Africa. And we are embedded, let's use the artistic language, with dots of strike action all over the nation. Yesterday, it was the resident doctors. 2 weeks ago, it was ASU, that is Polytechnic teachers. The other day, it was Nupeng, or Pegason. And so on and so on. Nurses and midwives are around the corner. We have teachers still calling for the 27% all over. You find that the nation workforce is dotted all over with this issue of strike. What is wrong?
Well, I think it must be seriously considered that the labor force of any nation is very important for the development and progress. When labor is satisfied to an extent, it becomes a yardstick for economic growth and development. Now, to a large extent, what is the labor union asking for? They're asking for some kind of security. They're asking for some entitlement. They're asking for their family to have some kind of secure future. They're asking for their immediate needs to be met. They're not asking for too much. You see, so when they go to the table to discuss with government, it is important that government considers that their work is important, and government must see how they can create comfortable situation and add palliatives so that they can, be encouraged to work. It's very important. Now, when it comes to strike, everybody suffers. It should be considered that these people have very important roles to play. First of all, if we look at the medical practitioners, doctors are very important, nurses are very important. When they go on strike, people die. You feel it, I feel it. People die. It is unnecessary. I think like Barrister said, that government must be sincere in their approach in dealing with the challenges that the labor forces decide to bring forward. Government must be sincere. Government must come to agreements and stick to those agreements. Government must have people in government that are from the labor, so that, when they are talking about the problems that labor is having, they will understand. Otherwise, labor will consider that government is insincere. And secondly, there is a corruption issue in Nigeria that seems to be fretting into all this. Now, does government prioritize payments for the labor people, for the doctors, for the nurses, for the teachers? Very important part of the economy. Does government prioritize them? If not, government must prioritize them in the budget. If they are not prioritized, then it happens that, okay, if there's money, they give them, or if there's no money, they don't give them. But it is important that it is prioritized so that the people will consider that they are an important part of the economy.
How would you describe the efficiency or the efficacy of industrial action in the past years? Because oftentimes you notice that most of the strike actions end up being suspended, not necessarily because the issues have been resolved.
Yes, that's why I said earlier that strike actions should really be applied as the last option. But because strikes are now used as tools for negotiation instead of a resort to failure of negotiation. It should be applied when negotiation has completely failed and not applied as a tool. You don't come to the negotiation table with your demand in one hand and strike on the other hand. You keep your strike at the back and come with your demands on both hands. And by the time negotiation fails completely, and the other party that has caused the failure of negotiation needs to be brought back to senses.
I'm twisted.
And I'm twisted.
Yeah.
You now bend back and pick up the strike that you kept behind.
Who do you think is responsible for the failure in the negotiation process?
In this instant case, as we have in Nigeria, let us bring down, because when you say strikes in the economy, there are strikes in both public and private sector. But let us limit ourselves for now to the public sector, because that is where you have the preponderance of strike actions.
Yes.
Yes, there are strike actions in the private sector, but you don't get to hear it because either they are quickly resolved or the number of people affected is not as much as those affected when the public sector people go on strike. Now, let us use the public sector for instance. And when you say public sector, the workers and the government. The workers are the employees, the government is the employer. In most instances, it is the employer, the government, that causes the failure of negotiation. One, either the government does not even want to negotiate, and that is very worrisome, that a labor union will give a notice because it is an inherent right on the worker.
And there's a process.
The worker has that right to withdraw his services when he feels his services are not adequately remunerated or appreciated by the employer. And then how do you appreciate the services? By providing for the worker his due wages and entitlements, and providing for the worker opportunities and conditions to optimally apply his human resources in his employment.
But on the contrary, the Minister of Labour and Productivity says that the federal government had never violated terms of agreement it reached with labour unions, as insinuated in some quarters.
You know the problem that we have in Nigeria, which I have sat down to look at even juxtapose it with the realities in other countries. We have a culture where government officials tell so much lies, and it's very worrisome. It has become so endemic that you now begin to worry and wonder whether the act of governance must be shrouded in lies, in secrecy, and in half-truths. It is becoming a culture in Nigeria, and it is very worrisome. In other climes, government officials will tell you the truth because government is a continuum. They will tell you the truth, and that is why when you tell your people the truth, they easily understand, cooperate, and see with you your own point of view. But when government activities of government and is filled with a lot of lies and half-truth, the people don't believe their leaders. The people don't trust their leaders. And the people will always not want to cooperate with their leaders, and they want their not to be shortchanged. If government official tells you there's no money to pay you, you will not believe him, because he has never told you the truth at all. If you count statements made by officials of government, if they are 100, the truth in the 100 will be merely 3, which is 3% truth. The rest will come out of fallout. And that is not good enough for leadership and followership. And that is why the people will always come to the negotiation table with strike in one hand, because they don't trust the people they are negotiating with. And the government officials themselves will resort to half-truth and lies, and will come back to tell you that it is not the government that fails the negotiation. Who fails? If you are supposed to pay the people and you don't pay, who is at fault?
Now, let me take you back to precisely about this time last year, when Association of University Lecturers, also the ASU, was on strike, and many months our children were out of universities. The president had to sit with leaders of ASU to discuss and let us see what the problem was. And the issue of an agreement that was signed in 2009 came up. I didn't sign this agreement. I don't know who agreed on this, because circumstances have changed. Here we are, the lapse in time for an agreement. You as a legal practitioner, Fred.
Yes.
A situation where an agreement was signed as far back as 2009. We're in 2014.
Yes.
And it was supposed to be carried out periodically.
Yes.
That was the terms of the agreement.
Yes.
And nothing happened within the first 2 years. Right or wrongly, if government says we did not sign because the circumstances, or we cannot accede to that agreement because circumstances have changed, adjudicate the rightfulness of thinking of government.
I say that government is a continuum, and it is very irresponsible of any government to say that agreement reached by its predecessor is not implementable or cannot be implemented by the current government, because the current government officials were not the ones who negotiated and signed that agreement. If you continue by that argument, why are you as a government official benefiting from the activities of your predecessors?
Good question.
Yes, because he who has credit must also have debit. To whom much is given, much is also desired. If you have to benefit from the activities and actions of your predecessor, you also have to carry on the agreement reached by your predecessor to fruition. And if peradventure you are unable to do that, a right-thinking government must call to a negotiation table the other party and explain in clear terms and bring the whole thing on the table, and not to browbeat that other party into submission just because you are the government.
Is that not what is happening now, Ejiro? Browbeating and government suggesting, look, there is nothing we can do. And this warning strike, this warning industrial action actually did go on. And this is what we're experiencing continually.
It's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. Now, there is a deep feeling of exploitation from the part of the workers. Now, what are we talking about exploitation? Exploitation from my own perspective means that, okay, I am working and you're not paying me what is due to me. You're not giving me what will make me progress. You're not giving me the necessary training that will develop my life. You're not taking care of my future. So you see, that feeling of exploitation becomes very deep. However, the workers do not have much option. They can't easily take another job. And that this brings the issue of brain drain. The world is becoming a global village. People are seeing what their colleagues and contemporaries are earning abroad. People are knowing what the opportunities are abroad. And they're comparing. They're saying to themselves, I have a PhD, I have a doctorate degree, I have a PhD, I am extensively skilled. Why shouldn't I go abroad to sell my services? Why should I stay here and live like a pauper? Why should I stay here and somebody threatens to replace me with the slightest argument? You threaten to replace me. So you see, in every relationship, which I'm considering now the relationship between the workers and the government, there are responsibilities on both parts. There's responsibility for the workers to empower themselves, to be skilled, to do their job well and to do it commendably. Now there's a responsibility of government, which is more like a social responsibility. You make sure that these people that are working, their families are intact. Okay. Their children are going to school, they are eating, they have houses. Now, these are basic needs. A lot of workers do not have these basic needs.
It's all right. We'd love to hear from you. All you need to do is like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Cool TV News. You drop your comments there as regards the Nigeria Labour Congress, the unfulfilled agreements, and as well as Twitter, where you can also be a part of the conversation. It's right here on your screen at Cool TV News NG. Now you get to watch previous and current editions of Core Digest on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Core TV, leave a space and news. Let me come to you, Barrister, as we begin to cash in on your profession as a legal practitioner. We're considering alternative to strike actions, given its negative impact not only on the economy but on the average Nigerian. I'm aware that there are courts called industrial courts. How come labor unions have not exploited this alternative?
Matters are referred to industrial courts when the issues become justiciable. At the point of negotiation, you don't resort to courts. Both parties come to a negotiation table, and when they negotiate, they sign agreements. The Nigerian system has been running in a way that even agreements signed, they don't register such agreements in the courts. They don't register such agreements in the courts. Because if such agreements were mutually signed by both parties and registered in the court, they become judgment of court. In that case, the agreements will now be enforceable to the court process. But when such agreements are not registered in the court, and the parties, especially the infringing party, will easily see such agreement as gentleman agreement.
Yes. Or just an understanding.
Yes, just an understanding.
Memorandum of
an MOU.
Which is neither here nor there.
Which neither here nor there. And they will easily breach such understanding. And that has been the experience we have in the past.
Even now.
Even now. But now that National Industrial Court, which was not recognized initially by the Constitution, it was an error, it was a slip, but has now been recognized in the amendment as a court of record. Even though by practice, initially, National Industrial Court was a court of record, but because it was not recognized by the Constitution, it was always having that issue of the bite and the teeth that it should have. But now that it has been recognized, and even many more branches of such court are being built and spread across the Federation, we expect that the use of such courts will be brought to bear on the process of labor negotiation and implementation of agreements.
In the light of that, ADR as has been practiced in Lagos State, how does that play, particularly with this issue of registration of agreement
in the courts,
in the law court?
Yes, the
ADR.
Yes, the nature of alternative dispute resolution requires ADR requires that when matters are referred to the ADR or the multi-door courthouse, it requires that parties should obey their own agreements. But the problem we have, even as we speak, is enforcement of even the outcomes of such negotiations. Enforcement, because as we speak, it is not to be enforced except the parties agree. Parties usually don't like a memorandum of understanding that they usually breach it is difficult, even the one that is called referral, it is difficult to enforce that, except you now go back to court. Because if you now go back to court, the matter will now be hard.
All over again.
All over again. It will not be handed over because the processes and the platform of ADR are entirely different from the process and platform of the court. Is a short mechanism that is especially meant not to take time of litigants, to save the time of the court, and to save costs. More or less, parties will submit themselves to dispute resolution. And then an unbiased third party will now sit in judgment to resolve both disputes. It's usually a no victor, no vanquished judgment situation. And that is why it is not called judgment, it is called resolution. All right? Unlike the court, the decision of the court is called judgment or order of court, which is enforceable under the law. But the decision of the ADR mechanism is not called judgment, rather it is called resolution. And that is why, and it is so good in civilized environment because it saves a lot of people a lot of stress. Okay. But in our own environment where people very easily resort to breaches, some very funny ones will go to ADR only to come out from the door and then renounce the agreement that he signed inside the courtroom, and then begin to give all manner of inside the ADR room and begin to give all manner of excuses why he will not obey such agreement. And then the other party will now be forced to approach the court again, and the matter starts all over again. So Nigeria is a very terrible environment where people don't go by the truth, and the chief culprit of half-truth in Nigeria is government.
Well, if the situation remains this way, that government will continue to disabuse the minds of labor leaders that they cannot fulfill agreements, are we going to sustain the relationship of governance being the care and giver of hope, unity, and aspiration to the Nigerian labor workers? The labor unions seem to have no faith whatsoever in the economy, in the government, and of course, their own work is almost as in jeopardy because government is playing the lopsided yo-yo. Today on Core Digest, as we look at the labor crisis, the Nigerian labor crisis, and unfulfilled agreements, particularly on the sides of government, we hope all of these areas we will explore to see why is it government is not fulfilling agreements. We've been talking on the sides of the labor unions and trade unions. On the other side, we will look at what the government is thinking. Don't go away. News is next, and we'll be right back.
Core TV News now provide a platform for live coverage of political rallies and electioneering campaign from anywhere in Nigeria. Political news stories, political editorial reviews, political discussions, personality profile, People's Parliament from the National, State and Local Government Assembly. Contact us now on 0803-471-8550 or 0803-724-9733. 01453-3407.
Our 24-hour news station